a top draft pick for the NFL was punished for being caught smoking marijuana in a video that was posted on social media.
Oh, no.
Now, the Ole Miss player is Laremy Tunsil, and apparently he was about to get chosen during the NFL draft, and someone released a video of him smoking a bong with a gas mask on, which is kind of impressive. Like, I don't really know how you do that, but sounds fun. Anyway,
some people root it into it so that it literally stays around you.
Makes sense. Okay, thank you, John.
I've heard.
Now, the offensive tackle from Mississippi was expected to be one of the top picks in the NFL draft. Most mock drafts projected he'd go somewhere between number 3 and number 6. However, 10 minutes before the draft began, a video was posted on his Twitter account of him smoking a bong with a gas mask on. Now, it's unclear who hacked into his Twitter account. It's also unclear why anyone would think he would tweet something like that, knowing that it would get him in a lot of trouble with the NFL. But the whole point of this story isn't that he got caught smoking marijuana. It's the type of reaction that the NFL has to players or potential players like him when it involves something like marijuana, and the way that they deal with more serious cases involving domestic violence. Now, the 21-year-old fell all the way to number 13 in the draft with the Miami Dolphins. There are estimates that the bong video cost him $8 million, okay? So
it's a lot of weed.
It is a lot of weed. But here's the thing that people don't understand, right? So there are all these arguments, especially in progressive media outlets, about how the NFL doesn't take cases of domestic violence seriously, but they take cases of marijuana smoking very seriously. And I would argue that the reason for that is because what they're more concerned about than anything else is their bottom line. And so if someone is using drugs, that might impact their performance in some way. It could impact their performance in a negative way. That raises red flags with the NFL way more than a domestic violence case that has almost no impact on how the player is playing.
Yeah.
That's at least my hypothesis, okay?
Yeah, there's the performance thing, I think. Maybe. I mean, the fact is that a lot of them do drugs. They just don't necessarily get caught. But I think it's more, I mean, it's how close it is to the draft. It's the fact that these teams are desperately looking not just to get great players at the draft, but to get great news coverage coming out of it to generate excitement amongst the media, amongst fans and all of that. And they think that having a druggie on their team is going to lead to a bunch of negative stories. Which it probably would in this case, because our culture is fucked in a variety of different ways, including how it looks positively on certain drugs and negatively on others. And so with this coming out just 10 minutes beforehand, if they draft him, then that's what all of the news stories are about. Now, I think it shows a particular sort of cowardice that the individual team cares more about a day of bad press than if you actually thought that this was a good player that could benefit your team and you were going to draft him so high, then just draft him and get through the bad press. Or take a strong stand and say, you know, we're going to stick by this kid. We're going to get him cleaned up from the marijuana. And then it would be over after 48 hours.
Yeah.
But they weren't willing to do that.
You know what gets a lot of bad press? Domestic violence cases. And then the NFL either trying to brush it under the rug or cover it up. I think that gets a lot more bad press
than
someone.
No, it doesn't seem like it does.
Why
aren't they as scared about it?
Ray Rice was a huge news story a few years ago. Everyone was talking about it. It left a very, very bad mark on the NFL, right? Right now, we have 4 states in the country that have legalized marijuana, not just for medicinal use, but for recreational use, right? He's a 21-year-old kid. All right, so he smokes some marijuana. It's not the end of the world. To punish him when he's so talented for something that a lot of Americans do is ridiculous. I mean, would they have the same reaction if he was caught drinking a beer or if he was caught taking shots at a bar?
Not at all.
No, they wouldn't take that action against him, even though alcohol has been proven to be more hazardous to your health than marijuana is. I'm just tired of people having their lives ruined over the fact that they smoke marijuana. I mean, in this case, it's a kid who, you know, had a really bright future and hopefully still has a bright future, but he's paying the consequences career-wise. Think about the untold tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Americans that got their lives ruined because they were thrown in prison over possessing marijuana.
Yeah.
We need to not only rethink our laws, but also rethink the way that we treat people who are discovered to smoke marijuana. This is ridiculous, okay? And also, take domestic violence cases a little more seriously. Let me give you a few examples. Frank Clark was the first draft pick of the Seattle Seahawks despite his history of domestic violence. Zero fucks given. You beat your wife,
Well, but
who cares?
that's what I'm saying, that apparently it doesn't generate as bad of a PR response.
Seahawks general manager even told reporters that he was certain Clark had never struck a woman, even though the publicly available police report clearly documented her injuries.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Apparently
NFL...
you need to have a video on Twitter for it to be evidence enough. They should have taken a video of the police report and posted it on Twitter.
It's interesting what the NFL cares about PR-wise. They don't care too much about the concussions. They don't care too much about the domestic violence. I mean, those two things are serious and life-threatening in a lot of cases, right? Mm-hmm. But they care a lot about marijuana, which is not life-threatening, and which honestly does not enhance a player's performance.
Yeah.
So what's the issue here?
I know almost nothing about how, other than watching movies like Jerry Maguire, how these drafts actually run. I know what the point of it is, how it runs in a general case. But so whenever you have like a crime is committed and you don't know who did it, you should look to who benefits from it. Mm-hmm. And so you have whoever was going to be one spot down in the draft who's now bumped up by him being bumped down, I would consider them or their family. But then also who benefits the most from this potentially, from my limited understanding of sports, seems like the Dolphins, because they got a far more competitive player at a lower draft point than they would have otherwise. I'd look into the Dolphins, and I have no evidence to back up any of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, they wouldn't know if he would still be around and all that stuff.
That's true, but they might be willing to roll the dice.
This was just a guy trying to extort money, and nobody would pay him.
You think we just haven't heard it yet?
No, I mean, the guy who had the video was trying to sell the video, and nobody would pay for it. And so, we got a video of a high school kid smoking pot, big deal. It just goes to show you how ridiculous the people making the choices at NFL draft days are. They're just as dumb as anybody else, and they let themselves get scared off a better player.
Yeah.
Because of a stupid video of a guy that even bullshit news websites wouldn't pick up because they knew it was just a video of a high school kid smoking pot. Who gives a shit? Which is what we should. But it turns out guys at the NFL still do, which just goes to show you how messed up the NFL is. What kind of a bubble do the people who work inside the NFL live in, that they have no interaction with the outside world? They don't, it's just the things that have been happening over and over. By the way, they have a guy still playing in the NFL who's, everyone knows, beat a 4-year-old kid in the genitals with a stick. We know he did it. He's still playing in the NFL.
By the way, another thing that I should note is after the draft, it became evident that he had asked his coaches for money because his mother was having a hard time paying her rent and her electricity bill.
Yes.
And so he's getting criticized for that.
So
So he can make the college all this money through playing on the team, right? But he's not allowed to ask his coaches, probably the people that he trusts the most outside of his family, to help him and his family afford rent.
Yeah, I don't know. That to me is a slippery slope because for him it's a perfectly legitimate thing helping out his family.
Yeah.
For most it'll be money, or it'll be cars, or it'll be whatever.
You know what? You're making all that money for your college. You should get money.
Oh, I think that they should get paid, and it should have absolutely nothing to do with the college because it has nothing to do with the college.
I agree with you on that.
It should not be connected to the college in any way. It should be a very minor league football league across the country.
I agree.
That's all it should be. It's got nothing to do with academics. Let them make as much money as they want by being paid to do what they want to do.
And shame on the NCAA for putting young kids who come from poor families in a position like that. Oh, you're going to break the rules? You're going to take money to feed your family. You're 18. What the F? And by the way, we're all making millions of dollars. The guys who are writing these rules that you can't take money for your mom's electric bill, we're all fucking loaded. And we don't know what the hell we're even talking about. And we've never had to worry about making the choice between eating or electricity or seeing a doctor or paying your gas bill. We never had to do any of that. But you have to because you're poor and you make money for us. So this is, again, this should be an indictment of the NCAA and how messed up that is. And it certainly doesn't say anything bad about the kid. And John's right. This is 100% exploitation. This should be a minor league football league. This should not be anything to do with the colleges because it doesn't have anything to do with education. This is just exploitation of college athletes.
Absolutely.